Hello, John Baxter. My name is Princey, and I am from the Brooklyn Daily Eagles. I will be asking you a few questions today.
Oh, hey, nice to meet you, Princey. What would you be asking me?
First, I would like to ask, what opinions do you have towards African American slaves? What are your views towards them?
In my opinion, slavery is by no means evil. It is legally a proper form of owning a person the way a person owns a domestic animal, As a slave owner myself, I own slaves for an investment and for the benefit they bring to my farming, my household, and my family.
Do you treat your slaves decently?
Yes, I do. I believe I treat them very decently, actually. I contribute and help them out around the fields with them. I'm a fair slave owner compared to other slave owners you see. Some slave owners are just extremely harsh and brutal and cruel to their slaves, which isn't right.
It's interesting you mentioned that other slave owners are cruel. Will you mind telling me what made you say that? According to your views and experiences as a slave owner, how do other slave owners treat their slaves?
Yeah, sure, I don't mind telling you. Some slave owners here are incredibly cruel to their slaves, like I had told you before. There have been several occasions where slaves have been reported for undergoing cruel and extremely harsh treatments. For instance, there's a story about one slave by the name of Betty, I believe, who was brutally mistreated by her slave owners, Amos Broad and his wife. Yes, that's who they were. In a cold winter day, they brutally hit Betty and threw her outside naked as she begged for clothes and as the cold weather and cold snow and everything was just hitting up against her frail body. But Broad's wife replied by throwing bowls of water at her. To release more anger, Broad's wife violated Betty, who was fairly young at the time. She scraped the child's hair on the carpet on one occasion, perhaps because she thought the baby's father was her husband. On another occasion, she kicked the baby out of the snow and then repeatedly knocked it down on the ground. Adding to that, Broad held the infant by the ear while his wife threw a knife at it, creating a severe bleeding. As a result of such bad abuse, the child was 16 and she was already crippled.
Do you know if they were ever punished for their brutal assault?
Yes, actually, I actually do remember. They were taken to court, the Vina Van Wyck Court of Kings County, who was a member of New York City's Manumission Society, witnessed the case of Betty and her child and took her to court. According to the court's decision, they fined them $500 each and sentenced them to 6 months in jail.
Have any of your slaves ever gone to an extent of committing murder of a slave?
Sure, it's not surprising. Murdering a slave in New York, however, is a crime. In fact, some slave owners who murdered their slaves or slaves were persecuted.